When they entered the apartment, what they found was disturbing. The first thing that they saw was a skinny 4-year-old Benji with 2 big black eyes. But not just that, Benji had bruises all over his body. He also had an injury in his ear, and because of that, he had a gauze just like sticking out of his ear. The officer said that he was very skinny and did not look like a normal 4-year-old. When they asked why did Benji have all these injuries, Miranda and Brandon said that he had behavioral issues and that he would do this to himself. They said that he had a habit of constantly poking his eyes and ears, and that's why it caused those injuries. Then officers decided to bring Benji alone into the bathroom, and they asked him again, what happened to you? Benji said the same thing his parents said and told the officers that he did it to himself and that he poked at his eyes and ears. But when you watch the video, it doesn't sound genuine, and it kind of sounds like Benji was rehearsed and told to say that. They had locks on their fridge, on their kitchen cabinets, and everywhere where there was food. They also noticed a lot of cameras set up in the apartment, especially in the kitchen. From their point of view, it just looked a little bit odd. Why are there so many locks and why is there cameras everywhere? Now, they retrieved all these cameras and began looking at all the footage, and I was not prepared to see what I saw. I think this was one of the saddest videos I've seen in a while. Watching how this boy would sneak out of his room in the middle of the night to look for food, it literally broke my heart. It was said that before Miranda moved into the home, Benji was able to just go in and out of the cabinets and fridge and get whatever he wanted. But then these locks were added and it became more difficult for Benji to get food.
This is the scary story about the homeowner. One day a young man was doing some yard work for a little extra money when he noticed a homeowner watching him from the window. Now this wasn't weird at all, but what was weird though was how every time the young man looked up at the homeowner just disappeared. The young man started to get annoyed, so he decided to knock on the front door and ask the homeowner, why you keep looking at me? He knocked, but no one answered. He kept knocking and knocking, but nobody answered. There was a person walking by and she said, "Hey kid, what are you doing?" The young man said, "I'm doing this person's yard work and they keep looking at me through the window." "That's impossible," said the woman. "The lady who lived there died years ago and nobody moved in ever since." The young man then got a chill down his spine. As the woman who was walking walked away, he turned around and saw the creepy woman in the window waving at him.
Let me tell you about some crazy history that you didn't learn in school. Tracy Edwards, who escaped from Jeffrey Dahmer and guided the police to his apartment, was later arrested for a homicide 20 years after that happened. Ted Bundy briefly worked at a suicide hotline in Seattle in 1971. In preparation of the German invasion, England removed over 50,000 signs preparing for World War II within just 4 days. 2025 marked only the 50th anniversary that a woman could sign her name on a mortgage by herself. Before this, it was required for a man to be a co-signer. These are a couple of predictions that were made by publications in the 1960s about what work was going to be like in the year 2000. The machines will be producing so much that everyone in the US will, in effect, be independently wealthy. Even non-working families will have an annual income of $30,000 to $40,000 or $300,000 to $400,000. Man, I'm actually speechless. By the year 2000, people will work no more than 4 days a week and less than 8 hours a day. With legal holidays and long vacations, this could result in an annual working period of 147 days and a total of 218 days off. Where did we go wrong, y'all? Wow.
This guy set up a camera in his grandma's room, and what he saw the next day totally freaked him out. He wanted to make sure she was okay, so he placed the camera to watch her during the night. In the recording, you can see him putting her to bed and gently fixing her blanket. But the moment he walked out, creepy things started happening. His grandma, who was peacefully sleeping just a second ago, suddenly stood up and started acting like something had taken over her. She walked around the room, whispered strange words, and then stared right into the camera. Every time her grandson walked back into the room, everything stopped. She was lying in bed again, like nothing ever happened. But as soon as he left, the creepy stuff started all over again. The next evening, he checked the footage again. This time, the camera caught something even weirder. In the corner of the room, where there was nothing before, a dark figure appeared. It looked like it was watching his grandma, and whenever she got up, the figure faded back into the shadows.
I am the reason you shouldn't drive alone in New Mexico after midnight. Hello, my name is Lala Hora, which means the evil hour. Every night I wait in the dark streets of New Mexico for an unfortunate traveler to come across my path. For those that know me, I am more feared than the devil himself. If you see me, one of two very bad things is about to happen to you. I first appear as a large black lump, constantly moving and changing shapes. If you see this, do not rest your eyes on it. If you look long enough, I will hypnotize and paralyze you, running you off the road. Then while you are still sitting in your vehicle, you will be able to see and feel everything, but you can't move. Then I will rush you and surround you, cutting up all oxygen for your last couple minutes. In the other case, I will show myself in human form, as an evil omen to show you that you or a loved one will soon be taken from the earth.
Top 5 most polluted countries in the world by micrograms of pollution per cubic meter. Afghanistan 46.5, Mongolia 46.6, India 52, Pakistan 59, Bangladesh 77.
This is a true horrifying story, part 25. Warning, this is not a joke. The information that's going to be shared is dangerous and life-threatening. Do not, under any circumstance, commit the actions that will be narrated. This is the world's most dangerous book ever, Shams al-Ma'arif. This book was written by Ahmad al-Buni in the 17th century. But technically, the author of this book is not a human being. I never did and will never read this book. And this is your second warning. Do not read this book. Ahmad al-Buni practiced black magic, and he was in contact with the most powerful jinns and demons before he passed away. The jinns were the authors of this book. The elder generations, like our moms and dads, have heard about this book and they were warned by it. There are thousands of horrifying stories of people who read this book. Shams al-Ma'arif explains everything about black magic, how to get in touch with the world of jinns, how to marry a jinn, and the sacrifices you have to do for the devil, and much more. Unfortunately, this book can be easily found online. One day, a Saudi Arabian man that read hundreds of books for a living decided to read this book specifically out of interest and love for all books, without fearing the consequences behind it. He reached the chapter that teaches readers how to get married to a female jinn. He laughed about it. He tried the ritual to experiment it. The first night after finishing the whole book and completing the marriage ritual, he felt someone breathing next to his face. And on the second night, he felt a hand touching his feet. And on the third night, he heard her voice. The man was officially locked in a marriage with a demon. 5 years go by. He met a normal, beautiful woman that he fell in love with, and they both decided to get married. A week before the wedding day, the bride, the bride's parents, and the groom's parents all pass and die in 3 different car crashes. These are the consequences behind this book. And it's also known from many stories of people that have died from reading the first few pages. If you don't finish reading the book, you will get killed. All my stories, all of them, are true incidents that happened one time only. But this book is a product that is permanently available online. I beg you, do not go anywhere near Shams al-Ma'arif. This video is to educate you on the dangers behind this book. Do not go anywhere close to the world of jinns.
Shh, stay still. Stay still.
Now, if you think that woman's overreacting, then you really have no idea what she's up against. It's arguably the most dangerous animal the average American has never heard of. Alright, enough fluff. Those are javelinas. Also known as peccaries, they look like desert pigs. They're actually from a different family. They're the mascot of a sleeper build. They might look like some extra seasoned bacon, but they'll put you in a perma nap if you press them. The reason why? Those right there. They have tusks, and tusk stands for terrier like Kruger. Every year, people get sent to the ER after getting gored by this aggressive not a pig. One woman got mauled, and the peccary tore all the tendons in her arm to where she couldn't move her fingers. But it could have been worse because they're about yay high. If they catch the wrong part of your leg and sever your femoral artery, then you ought to be an obituary. You cooked, my guy. Like most animals, they're not out here looking for fays, but there's two good ways you can get got, and one is if you get too close to their spawn. They will run up on you in the name of parenthood. Speaking of run as fast as you think they are faster. But things can get real critical if you're walking your dog. Why? Well, javelinas have a lot of predators. One of them are coyotes. And what's a dog to a peccary with canine bias? Yeah, your pet can get profiled and get y'all both packed up, and also since they travel in groups called squadrons, you can really get packed up by a squad of swine. Also, they have poor eyesight, so any movement can be a threat. So if you're ever in the US Southwest and peep a peccary, you're gonna want to keep your distance, make noise so they can avoid you, and if it gets close, throw something not at them, but near them. And remember, most injuries come from people walking into them or even feeding them, so mind your manners, you'll probably be alright. The more you know.
Morbid Facts, Part 851. Here's a photo of Magda Goebbels with her 6 children, taken sometime before all 6 would be murdered by their own parents as Nazi Germany collapsed. Their father, Joseph Goebbels, wasn't just a high-ranking Nazi, but the architect of the regime's propaganda machine. A man responsible for saturating Germany with anti-Semitic hatred, glorifying mass murder, justifying the Holocaust, and convincing millions that extermination and total war were moral duties. He publicly called for the annihilation of Jews, celebrated civilian deaths, and demanded Germans to fight to extinction rather than surrender, even as cities burned and children starved. As Soviet forces closed in on Berlin in May of 1945, Goebbels remained fanatically loyal to Hitler, retreating with his family into the Führer bunker. There, Magda decided that her children could not live in a world without Nazism, poisoning each of them with cyanide as they slept. Afterward, Joseph and Magda reportedly took their own lives as Berlin fell and the Third Reich collapsed around them.
What people in 1926 thought 2026 would be like. So it's almost 2026, which got me thinking, what did people 100 years ago in 1926 think 2026 would be like? Well, here's a painting that was made in 1926 showing what modern London would look like in 2026. And you're probably looking at this and thinking, yeah, this is way off. But the more you look at it and you see the skyscrapers, planes, and how the city is shaped, it's not too far off, right? Next, I also found online that in 1926, someone in London who worked for the newspaper predicted that in 2026, Canada would join the United States as a country. You know, I really doubt that would happen, but I guess you never know, right? Finally, it was also predicted that in 2026, we would stop building skyscrapers because all of the traffic they cause and urban congestions. However, as time goes on, we can see skyscrapers are only becoming more popular and taller.
This video is absolutely terrifying. Please watch it. Look how tiny this dude is in comparison to this giant sculpture. Like, yes, this video is fake, but it is so freaking creepy. If you're scared of underwater stuff, just watch it. Who the hell are they? Who are they? This one's real. This is a massive statue that is in Germany, and look how tiny the dude is in comparison to it. Like, yes, the first video is fake, but all the other things I'm showing you are going to be real. So if you have megalophobia, which is fear of big things, or submechanophobia, fear of massive things underwater that are man-made, you're not going to be liking this video at all. Look at this one. Look how tiny the dude is in comparison to it. This is in Abu Dhabi. Oh my god, this thing is huge. Like, look at that. Could you imagine sitting there and, like, looking out and seeing this massive statue in the water with it, like, reaching out to you? I would poop my pantaloons. These massive hands coming out of the water in Italy. Oh my god, that is terrifying. Look at this massive statue in the water. That's disgusting. This massive hand reaching out of the water. Like, why would you put this kind of stuff in the water and ocean? Are you trying to make me have a panic attack? How are we feeling about these? If you're scared, you have submechanophobia. Congratulations.
Extra Morbid Facts, Part 106. On Christmas Eve in 2008, 45-year-old Bruce Jeffrey Pardo arrived at his ex-wife's house in California wearing a Santa Claus suit and carrying multiple firearms. When the front door was opened by an 8-year-old girl, he shot her in the face before opening fire at a crowded family Christmas party. Bruce then unleashed a homemade fuel dispensing device hidden inside a wrapped present, igniting a massive fire that trapped victims inside as the house burned. 9 people were killed, some by gunfire and others burned so so badly that it took investigators several days to identify them. The fire burned so intensely that parts of Bruce's Santa suit melted onto his skin, forcing him to flee while still on fire. He later drove to his brother's house, where he turned the gun on himself. Investigators later determined the attack was driven by rage over a recent divorce, mounting financial pressure after losing his job, and a bitter custody dispute, with Bruce specifically targeting his ex-wife and her family. Police discovered that he'd spent months preparing, stockpiling weapons, booby-trapping vehicles with explosives, and compiling a list of additional targets including his ex-wife's divorce attorney, making the attack one of the most disturbing holiday massacres in U.S. history.
Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming is one of the most remarkable and beautiful places on Earth. Not only is it renowned for its biodiversity, it's also home to one of the world's so-called supervolcanoes. This supervolcano sits atop one of the world's largest magma bodies fueled by an upwelling plume of superheated material. This dynamic and violent subterranean plumbing means the water bodies at the surface, the famous Yellowstone hot springs, are highly acidic and incredibly hot. If you were to ignore the countless warnings around these hot springs telling you to stay away, do not go in the hot springs, if you were to ignore those and go in one, or more accurately, fall in one, this is what would happen to you. First, your body would register that your skin was bathing in waters exceeding 200 degrees Fahrenheit. This would hurt like nothing you can possibly imagine, but it would only hurt as long as your nervous system was able to register pain, which would only be for about 1 minute or less. At this temperature, your skin would begin to quickly break down and disintegrate, and your blood vessels in your underlying dermis would rupture, causing rapid blood loss. Some underlying skin layers would not break down, but they would lose all of their water and become tough and blacken. And your underlying subcutaneous fat would bubble off as well. All in all, this is known as a full thickness burn, and it would occur in about 1 minute in these waters. Your nervous system would enter a state of shock and become irreversibly damaged, which would lead to most, if not all, of your organs to fail if the heat stress has not already done that to you. You would be dead within 2 to 3 minutes, and then at that point, the acidity of the water would take over. Within a few hours, your body, including your skeleton, would be completely dissolved into absolute nothingness. And for anyone who falls in but manages to climb out again before being dissolved, they are not out of the woods. Many of those people, unfortunately, will die hours, days, months later due to complications from the burns. On June 7th, 2016, Colin Scott and his sister Sable went to Yellowstone to see the famous hot springs. The siblings were exploring the Norris Geyser Basin, which is the park's oldest and hottest thermal area, when they decided to leave the safety of the boardwalk and walk past all the signs telling them, do not leave the boardwalk, this is dangerous, turn around. They decided to walk past all of those and venture out off the course. They walked approximately 200 meters away from the path to the edge of a hot spring that was not really part of the main tour, and they were just standing there when Colin apparently tripped and fell into the hot spring. And his sister was just not able to do anything. She knew she couldn't go in after him, and he very quickly sunk below the surface and didn't come up again. She ran back to try to get help, but by the time they got back to the edge of the hot spring, he was gone. And in fact, the only thing they would find of Colin Scott was his flip-flops. Since 1890, Colin Scott, along with 21 other people, have died by falling into these hot springs. In 1827, French Admiral Jules d'Urville was mapping the coastline of South Island when he instructed his navigator to enter the pass. As d'Urville's crew was entering the narrowest section of the pass, they lost control of their ship and they began spinning. They eventually hit some rocks which cracked their hull, but luckily they came to rest on a nearby reef which prevented them from sinking. After the incident, d'Urville went back to France, and in his report, he said no one should enter the French pass unless in an emergency situation, because the French pass is home to some of the world's most deadly whirlpools. On March 10th, 2000, 7 experienced divers headed out to the French Pass to begin their 5th week of instruction in their Dive Master course. With a Dive Master certification, they would become professional divers. As part of their curriculum, they needed to complete what's called a drift dive, where instead of trying to fight the current, you simply go with it. These 7 divers, which were 6 students and 1 instructor, would all be tethered to the same 30-meter long line. On one end of this line was attached a buoy, buoy, and then connected to the buoy was an inflatable raft. This allowed surface observers in the boat to track the progress of the dive. The plan was to boat out to the middle of the pass during high tide, jump in the water, and then ride the slow current out of the pass again, avoiding all the whirlpools. One of the student divers' husbands, a man named Hallett Smith, who had previously completed the dive master course, was in the boat as a safety observer, and he said as soon as the group got in the water and they went subsurface, immediately their buoy and raft took off at a rapid pace. Smith had to tell the boat driver to speed up just to keep pace with the divers, but after only a minute or two, the divers appeared to just stop suddenly in the water, and the inflatable raft started spinning in circles. When they drove over to the raft to see what was going on, Smith looked down and realized what had happened. The buoy and the line attached to it that all the divers were holding onto had ripped off of the inflatable raft and been sucked under the surface out of view. It would turn out the lead instructor had gotten the tides wrong and nobody had noticed. When the divers jumped into the water, it was not high tide like the instructor said it would be. It was changing from high tide to low tide, which meant instead of there being a 1 or 2 knot current, perfect for a drift dive, there was a 6 knot current ripping through the waterway that sucked them under. And for reference, any current that's above 3 knots is basically physically impossible to swim out of. So all these divers could do was ride it out and hope the current spat them out before pushing them into a whirlpool. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. All 7 divers were pulled directly into the worst whirlpool of all. Down they went, all the way down to 100 meters at the bottom of this hole where they were pinned until eventually the whirlpool began releasing them. 6 divers surfaced, 4 were badly shaken up but were alive. One of them was the lead instructor. 2 had drowned. That was 40-year-old Ricky McDonald and Smith's wife, 33-year-old Narelle Tapuri. As for the 7th and final diver, 21-year-old David Welsh, his body was never found, so that's led some people to believe he may still be trapped at the bottom of Jacob's Hole.
Most extreme beauty standards in the world. China. Foot binding. Myanmar. Neck extensions. Japan. Black teeth. Ethiopia. Lip plates. Japan. Yaiba. Malawi. Chiseled teeth.
What if you had to live in a building filled with meat? Let's talk about the full story and lore of the horror game Flesh, Blood, and Concrete. Full spoilers ahead, the ending of this one is crazy. The game starts with a strange flashback from the main character's childhood. They get picked on by some fellow students and discover a dead body outside their apartment. Fast forward to the present day and we're being woken up by a strange girl in a school uniform. We were in our car filling it with exhaust trying to take our own life, but we don't want her to know that. She takes us to her apartment and says we should be able to find some gasoline here somewhere. Wait, where are her parents? Where is everybody else in this apartment? And the whole building is strange. Some of the rooms look very familiar, but we can't place exactly where we remember them from. The little girl's name is Nika, and it looks like she's still following us around everywhere as we explore. She seems lonely. The higher we go inside the apartment complex, the more we start to see piles of flesh filling the rooms. In an attempt to leave, we find that our car outside has actually been there for a long time, looking rusted and run down. It becomes clear that this place is beyond our understanding. Is it a hallucination? Are we in the afterlife? All we know now is we are here with Nika. She tells you she's been here for a very long time and that she can never leave. She's seen many people here, but you are the first to make her feel like she isn't alone. The rooms we have been seeing have been filled with small memories of our life before, and we reflect as we come to the game's final choice. Do we head into the flesh pit and become happy as Nika suggests? This is basically us going through with taking our life. Or do we leave and gain another chance at life? The true ending involves us leaving through an entrance Nika creates for us. She's distraught to see us leave, but happy for us all the same. However, if we decide to go through with it and descend into the pit, we return to that fated day in the snow when we discover the dead body. Except the children here aren't mean to us. There's no dead body, and our mother is there, as warm as ever. What do you we all think this story really means. This is the lore behind the horror game that forces you to forget. Let's talk about the full story of the horror game Play Me Re. Full playthrough on my channel, although we will go over even the true ending here, which hides the game's biggest secret. The game starts with our character Re. They have a relatively plain looking room with a lockbox under their bed. This hides the game's true ending, we'll get to that later. Re has some tasks to do every week. Grab our knife, grab our stew, help our friends, and feed Set. We grab our stuff and head to the garden where we can choose to help our friends Rolfus, Jelly, and Scrimly. These are simple tasks like picking flowers, berries, etc. But then, Ree says it's time to head down into the hole so we can feed Set. What does that mean? This is where the game takes a horrible turn. The underground is a place where Set is kept restrained. But why? Why are we keeping them here? We cut a chunk of their flesh off, eat it, and leave Set there for it to grow back. It turns out we have an illness that requires us to eat Set's flesh in order to drive it away. It causes our nose to bleed, and we get boils endlessly if it's not treated. We continue this process of forcing Set to exist in misery, helping our friends, and keeping the illness away. Until one day, Set is nowhere to be found. We chase them through the hole they dug in the flesh wall and find them in the garden with all of our friends murdered by them. Set has lost their sanity and we have to fight them. During the battle, they kind of admit to us that they were jealous of how we were with the other friends, and they made a wish to God that it could only be Set and us together. And this involved a mushroom stew? What does this mean? We'll get to that later in the true ending. If we lose this battle, Set cuts off our head and keeps us as their friend. But if we win and get the death routes for all of our friends, we unlock the true ending. In the lockbox is a picture of the entire friend group, and they used to be human. Set's wish, the food, it turned them into these animals. But we were never supposed to eat the stew. It was supposed to be us and Set together. Resentful, Ree kept Set in the underground to keep themselves from transforming, all while they forced themselves to forget of how happy life was before.
Watch this. It's absolutely terrifying. The mind flayer from Stranger Things takes over the Las Vegas sphere, and it's genuinely terrifying. Oh my god, look at this. That thing is 400 feet tall, by the way, the sphere. Imagine driving down Las Vegas and looking over and seeing this. My soul would leave my body. Here's some technical information about the sphere if you want to pause to read. But yeah, now the Las Vegas sphere is absolutely huge, and just to see the mind flare on that thing would send me into cardiac arrest post-haste. Also, how are we feeling about Stranger Things? Because the next 4 episodes of the season air tonight on Christmas Day, and then the finale is on New Year's Eve. So how are we feeling? Who do we think's gonna die? Please no spoilers, I can't watch until Saturday. But apparently 6 characters are going to die, either in these 4 episodes or in the finale. So I'm kind of scared. How are we feeling, and who do we think is going to meet their demise in Stranger Things? Because this daggum show has been going for 10 years. 10 years. So people have gotten attached to these characters, and I am very curious as to see what's going to happen. But this thing is going to haunt my nightmares.
Morbid Facts, Part 852. Comedy legend Artie Lang survived one of the most self-destructive spirals in modern celebrity. In January of 2010, after years of severe heroin addiction, he stabbed himself multiple times in the abdomen inside his Hoboken apartment, collapsing from internal bleeding and barely surviving emergency surgery. His addiction later led to overdoses, constant arrests, homelessness, and the collapse of his nasal septum as a result of long-term cocaine abuse, permanently disfiguring his face. Thankfully, in recent years, Lang has said he's sober, lives mostly out of the spotlight, and prioritizes stability and health over returning to fame. In 2007, Shelley Miscavige, the wife of Scientology leader David Miscavige, and once one of the organization's most powerful figures, attended her father's funeral and then completely vanished from public view. She's not been seen, photographed, or heard from publicly ever since. In 2013, actress and Scientology defector Leah Remini filed a missing persons report, prompting the LAPD to state they had located Shelley and confirmed she was alive and safe, though no evidence, images, or details were released, and no independent verification has ever occurred. Former Scientology members allege she was removed from leadership and confined to a secret church facility due to internal conflicts with David, claims which the organization vehemently denies, leaving her disappearance unresolved nearly 2 decades later.
Wholesome facts that'll make your day slightly better, Part 1. When a human sees a puppy, a chemical called dopamine is released in the brain. Elephants also release dopamine when they see people, meaning that they think we're cute in the same way we think puppies are cute. There's a YouTube channel called Dad, How Do I that teaches young people things that would typically be taught by a father figure. From how to change a tire to how to tie a tie, fans of the channel think it's super helpful. When you're on a walk with your dog and they stop to take a dump, you may notice that your fluffy friend is staring at you as they poop. They do this because they're in a defenseless position and they're trusting you to keep them safe. There are more public libraries in the US than McDonald's. After the horrific events of 9/11, a small Kenyan tribe known as the Maasai people gave 14 cows to the US in their support. The man who played Mickey Mouse ended up marrying the woman who played Minnie Mouse, meaning that true love actually exists.
She sat on the couch while her children were opening their Christmas gifts, but she wasn't alive. In 2011, Giselle Preston was living in Anaheim, California with her husband William, their newborn son, and her 2 daughters who were from a previous relationship, and they were ages 3 and 8. At 26 years old, Giselle started to take a college course in hopes of becoming a domestic violence counselor. She wanted to provide guidance to people suffering in violent and abusive relationships. She felt a calling to this job because she was in a violent and abusive marriage herself. Her husband, 30-year-old William Wallace, had beat her on previous occasions and was even spending time in jail because of it. Despite this, Giselle loved her husband very much and didn't want their marriage to end. She even had a profile picture on Facebook of the two kissing, and it said, "Lovebirds for life." On Christmas Eve of 2011, William had already been released from prison, so the two went to a neighbor's house for a party. Once they arrived back to the apartment, neighbors could hear them in a heated argument. When the neighbor looked out the window, they saw William carrying what appeared to be a human body near the front gate. The neighbor wasn't too concerned. They thought maybe William was just helping a drunk individual go back to their home. Once William was inside of the apartment, the argument continued and Giselle tried to leave the apartment, but then he dragged her back inside. The argument escalated and became physical, and William threw Giselle on top of a glass table, shattering it. Giselle's 8-year-old daughter tried to help William pick her mother up and take her to the bathroom so that she could pick out the glass shards from her body. At this point, Giselle suffered a concussion from a blow to the head. But sadly, this was just another day in the household. The children were used to seeing their mother get beaten by William, and William just assumed that she would be okay and she would forgive him and the cycle would continue. Little did William know that this time had gone too far. Later that evening, once the children went to bed, William realized that his wife Giselle had succumbed to her injuries. Next morning was going to be Christmas, and William wanted to come up with a plan so that his children could still enjoy Christmas. William's plan was to speak directly to their children, not to apologize for what they had witnessed, not to break the news that their mother had passed away, but to shift the blame onto Giselle and tell them that she had blacked out the night before and that mommy ruined Christmas because she was drunk. Next morning, William propped up Giselle's lifeless body on the couch and put sunglasses on her to make it seem like she was still alive. The lie that Giselle was blackout drunk made the illusion easier to sell to the children. At one point, Giselle's oldest daughter approached her and noticed that she felt cold. It was at this point that William realized he needed to put an end to this, so he reached out to emergency services at 9 a.m. William told the operator that his wife needed medical attention, and once paramedics arrived, they were confused when they saw Giselle sitting on the couch with sunglasses looking perfectly fine. Once they approached her, they realized that she was deceased, and William tried to shift the blame on Giselle, claiming that she had injured herself a while ago, but they weren't buying the story and they immediately called police. William was arrested and placed on a $1 million bond. As the investigation continued, police were searching the home and they saw blood spots everywhere, and there was even holes in the doors and walls. In court, William stated that they were drinking, had an argument, and he tossed her around a little bit. He claimed this was a normal part of marriage and he did nothing wrong. In June of 2021, nearly 10 years later, William was convicted of second-degree murder and was sentenced to 15 years to life in prison.